We still think that China is very powerful, but we were wrong. Something unusual is happening in their country that most people don't notice. They always have brownouts, and they also have a lot of buildings with no people. They also have workers who are no longer getting paid, and some of their factories are shutting down. There are cities in their country where the lights are gradually being turned off. There are also local governments that can no longer pay their debts. And what was once called an economic miracle now seems to be slowly falling apart as the whole world watches. On television, you can see their beautiful skylines and modern cities, but behind the shiny image, there are problems that aren't being shown. In fact, China is carrying a heavy burden right now, and it seems like it can no longer handle its own weight. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some experts are saying that China's development is not just slowing down, it's also gradually declining. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. It means a lot to us, content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. Let's start with the biggest loss of money in modern history. And this is no joke. More money has been lost in China now compared to the combined losses during their 2008 financial crisis and other major crises in the past 100 years. This means this is the biggest loss of money in modern history. Back then, China's property market was worth more than $50 trillion. It was even bigger than the combined housing market and stock market of the United States. For many years, it seemed like the rise in house prices would never end. Every year, prices kept going up. That's why families put all their savings into buying an apartment. But why? Because they thought it was safe. For many people, real estate is the safest investment. It's like they have a silent guarantee from the government that it won't collapse. But it did. Since late 2025, house prices have been falling for 29 consecutive months. That's almost 2.5 years of continuous decline, and there's still no clear sign of when it will stop. According to Goldman Sachs, if there is no major help or intervention from the government, prices could drop by another 20 to 25%. This means that the value of houses could be only half of their previous highest price. And the situation is even worse in what they call Tier 3 cities. These are cities that make up almost 60% of China's gross domestic product. Real estate agents who go months without making a sale. And this is where the problem becomes serious. Almost 70% of family wealth in China is invested in real estate. So when apartment prices fall, it's not just homes that are lost. Savings are lost too. The feeling of security in life disappears. Plans for the future are also lost. Let's think about a married couple from Shenzhen. Let's call them the Wang family. They did everything right. They saved for 15 years. In 2021, they took out a mortgage. They put their entire life savings, around $100,000, into a pre-sale apartment from one of the biggest developers in China. The promise was that the building would be finished by 2023. They already bought furniture and even thought about where to put the crib for their future child. But the building wasn't finished. The developer ran out of money. Construction stopped at the 15th floor. Only a concrete skeleton was left behind. And the Wang family, until now, are still paying the mortgage for a unit they haven't lived in yet and might never get to live in at all. Their down payment seems to have disappeared. Their monthly payments are only going towards the interest, the future they worked hard for over many years. They lost what they trusted because of the system, and they're not the only ones with this story. All over China, there are more than 20 million pre-sold apartments that are still unfinished. 20 million units have already been sold to families, but until now, they are still waiting. And every building that stands unfinished is like a silent symbol of a huge problem that the beautiful lights of the skyline can no longer hide. Now think about this. Millions of families continue to pay mortgages for houses that don't exist yet. They're paying for nothing, loans for apartments that may never be built. Some tried to protest, some organized online, but these were quickly censored, erased, removed from the internet as if it never happened. You remember Evergrande. It's the biggest property developer in China. It sank into more than $300 billion of debt. $300 billion. That's even bigger than the entire gross domestic product of Finland. Then Country Garden also collapsed. It has another $187 billion in debt. If you combine the debt of the major property developers in China, it's even bigger than the entire gross domestic product of France. And where did most of that money come from? From ordinary families who trusted the system. In 2022, the so-called mortgage boycotts began. In more than 100 cities, buyers refused to pay their mortgages because their apartments weren't being built. The government rushed to control the news. They launched so-called rescue construction programs. But it wasn't enough. Once trust is lost, it's hard to get it back. Now fewer people are buying new homes. In the first half of 2025, new home sales dropped by another 4%. Meanwhile, new construction starts fell by almost 20%. And the government, which was expected to handle all the problems, is also facing its own crisis. It's not just families who lost money because of the property market crash. Even local governments are losing money. There's one thing most people don't know about China. Local governments there don't rely on taxes like in Western countries. For many years, they've made money by selling land. They sell land to developers. They buy cheap farmland outside the city. They sell it at a higher price when it's turned into a residential or commercial area. The profit from that was used to build roads, pay teacher salaries, fund the police, build hospitals, and improve infrastructure. At its peak, land sales made up 30-40% of the local government's income. Now that's gone. Because the developers are bankrupt and no one wants to buy land, the income dropped. The value of land auctions fell to around 3 trillion yuan. That's almost only half of the previous peak. Last year, more than 10% of the land put up for auction didn't get a single bidder. Not a low bid, zero. No one wants to buy at any price. Because of this, many local governments are facing a severe financial crisis. In Hainan province, the salaries of civil servants in Guangdong have been reduced by 50%. The richest province in China, home to major tech and manufacturing companies, has reduced the salaries of government workers by 25-30%. There are cities that can no longer afford to turn on the streetlights at night. Some can no longer clean up garbage regularly. Road repairs are no longer being done. Public services that used to be normal are no longer being funded. In Tianjin, a major city with more than 13 million people, the government was forced to sell its own office buildings just to pay salaries. Imagine that. They can't even afford their own offices anymore. There's a contractor named Chen Wei from Sichuan province. He spent 20 years building highways, bridges, and overpasses, projects that help cities grow within China. Last year, he was owed money. The local government owed him 43 million yuan for a completed project. He didn't receive anything. He was forced to lay off 200 workers. Some of them haven't received their salaries for 8 months. According to Chen Wei, in an interview with a reporter before it was deleted, they kept saying the money would come, but there was nothing left to give. His story is not unique. This keeps happening all over the country. And this is where the situation becomes even more frightening. For many years, there have been what are called local government financing vehicles, or LGFVs. These are like shell companies used by the local government to borrow money without it appearing on the official record. Through this, they built high-speed rails with very few passengers, financial districts with no people, airports with no passengers. All of these were built using borrowed money that shouldn't appear on the official balance sheet. According to the International Monetary Fund, this so-called hidden debt has already exceeded 65 trillion yuan. If you include the official local government debt of almost 48 trillion yuan, the total reaches 134 trillion yuan. That's equivalent to about $18 trillion. That's even bigger than the combined economies of Japan and Germany. That's even bigger than the entire official gross domestic product of China. And what's worse, most of these LGFVs are not profitable. Their median return is around 1%, but the interest they pay on their debt is over 5%. That means more money is going out than coming in. And when that's the system, it won't last without bigger problems. If you add up the numbers, they really don't match. Almost half of the local government projects would lose money without major support from the central government. According to a well-known source, by the end of 2024, local governments will have accumulated more than 10 trillion yuan in unpaid debts to contractors and civil servants. This means that workers who built the highways haven't been paid yet. Companies that supplied steel and cement are still owed millions. Retirees are having their benefits reduced. The whole system seems to be suffocating under the weight of IOUs, promises of payment that are no longer there. In late 2024, Beijing announced a 12 trillion yuan debt restructuring package. They say this is the biggest intervention to help local governments. They called it a solution. But according to some analysts, it's just extend and pretend. It means they're not really fixing the problem. They're just postponing it, because that package is estimated to cover only around 25% of the real problem. The rest, they're just spinning around. The debt, they're extending the loan, pushing the payments into the future, hoping that some miracle will suddenly happen. But that's not how math works. And while the debt is getting worse, another big problem is coming. The factories that made China rich are leaving. For 40 years, almost everything you use had a label that said made in China. Phones, clothes, electronics, toys, furniture, appliances. China became the factory of the whole world. Because of that, hundreds of millions of people rose out of poverty. That was the foundation of their economic miracle. But times are changing. In May 2025, Apple's chief executive officer, Tim Cook, made an announcement that used to seem impossible. He said that most of the iPhones sold in the United States will now come from India, not China, India. And Vietnam will become the source of almost all iPads, Macs, Apple Watches, and AirPods sold to American consumers. Just think about it, Apple, which built almost its entire manufacturing empire in China, is now quickly moving out. The numbers are clear. In the first half of 2025, iPhone production in India increased by 53% compared to the previous year. India has exported more than $22 billion worth of Apple products. The number of made-in-India smartphones shipped to the United States jumped by 240% year over year. And for the first time in history, India has surpassed China as the top exporter of smartphones to the United States. Now, 44% of United States smartphone imports come from India. While many remain silent, the world has already changed. And it's not just Apple making moves. Samsung closed its last phone factory in China several years ago. Now, most of their smartphones are made in Vietnam and India. Nike now makes more shoes in Vietnam than in China. This is the opposite compared to 10 years ago. Sony, Dell, HP, Google, all of them are gradually moving production out of China at a pace that has never happened before. Even some Chinese companies are leaving as well. For example, BYD, one of the largest electric vehicle companies in China, is building factories in Mexico, Thailand, Hungary, and Indonesia. Instead of expanding within their own country, why are they leaving? First, labor is no longer cheap in China. In the past 10 years, factory wages have tripled. In Vietnam, the cost for workers is only half. In India, it's even lower. This used to be China's strongest advantage. That's why cheap labor is no longer as strong now. Secondly, the government has become more unpredictable under Xi Jinping. In 2023, the government implemented a stricter anti-espionage law. Many foreign companies became worried because when the rules aren't clear and suddenly change, businesses prefer places that are more stable and where protection is more certain. And when factories start to leave, it's not just jobs that are lost, the momentum is lost as well. And when an economy that's used to rapid growth loses momentum, the fall is felt even more. On top of that, when even simple market research can get you arrested for spying. When checking the production numbers in your own factory can be called espionage, it's only natural for executives to look for an exit. And that's exactly what happened. Foreign direct investment in China has dropped by more than 80%. This isn't just simple diversification anymore. Many are leaving for good. The third reason is that COVID taught the whole world a painful lesson. When China went into lockdown, factories closed. Global supply chains suddenly stopped. There were no parts. Products couldn't be shipped. Businesses were paralyzed. The former just-in-time model became just too bad. Companies realized it's risky if all products come from only one country. If there's a problem there, everyone is affected. And fourth, and perhaps the most serious of all, workers are also disappearing. But there's something deeper than factories leaving. There's something that no amount of money can buy, build, or bring back. Population. In 2024, China's population declined for the third consecutive year. There are more coffins than cradles. More people are dying than being born. And the gap grows bigger every year. In 2024, 9.5 million babies were born, but almost 11 million people died. That means the population decreased by almost 1.5 million in just 1 year. And according to demographers, this is just the beginning. China's fertility rate is around 1.0 child per woman. To keep the population stable, you need 2.1. China doesn't even have half of what it needs. It's getting close to South Korea's fertility rate of 0.73, the lowest in the world. Some cities in China are even lower than that. Do you remember the one-child policy? For many decades, families were only allowed to have one child. The policy worked, but it became too effective. Something in the structure of society was broken that might never be fixed. And this is what Beijing fears the most. By the end of 2024, there will be 310 million Chinese people over 60 years old. That is 22% of the entire population. Just 5 years ago, it was only 18% within a decade. The number of senior citizens in China could reach 400 million. That's even more than the entire population of the United States. In many regions, there are now more retirees than workers. Who will take care of them? Because of the one-child policy, what demographers call 4-to-1 families have emerged. 4 grandparents, 2 parents, 1 child. One person expected to support 6 people while also building their own family and career. Even mathematically, this is not sustainable. Emotionally, it's even heavier. The pension system is being born. In 2022, 14 provinces reported a shortage in pension funds. By 2035, analysts estimate that China will need an additional $300 billion each year just to keep the pension system alive. That's even bigger than the entire military budget of the country. While the number of workers contributing to the system is getting smaller and smaller, the number of retirees taking from it is getting bigger and bigger. The working age population started to shrink in 2012. In 2024 alone, almost 7 million workers were lost. It's like losing the entire workforce of a medium-sized European country in just 1 year. Factory owners are having a hard time finding employees. Pension administrators are seeing fewer contributions. Stores have fewer customers with money. Meanwhile, the number of marriages also dropped. In 2024, only 6.1 million couples got married. A decade ago, it was over 13 million. The number of divorces reached 2.6 million. Fewer marriages mean fewer babies. And when fewer children are born each year, the future direction becomes clearly worse. Still, fewer babies now means fewer workers in the future. Fewer workers, but more elderly people who need care. Here, cold statistics meet the real sadness of people. In August 2025, youth unemployment in China reached 18.9%. This is the highest since Beijing changed how they measure joblessness. Let's go back to June 2023, when the official youth unemployment reached a record 21.3%. Then something unusual happened. The government said they needed to release data to improve their statistical methods. But the truth is, they needed to hide the numbers that seemed embarrassing. When they resumed releasing data, they had a new way of measuring, and the students were not included in the count. And suddenly the unemployment rate dropped. The timing was perfect. But according to some independent estimates, the real unemployment rate could be around 25–30%. That means 1 out of every 3 or 4 young people is unemployed. Imagine college graduates, engineering students with advanced degrees delivering food using electric scooters, medical school graduates driving rideshare, law graduates selling insurance door to door. Just this year, 12.2 million new graduates entered the job market. 12.2 million young people are looking for jobs that aren't there. They're searching for careers that seem to have disappeared. They're looking for the future that their parents promised them. Let's think about Liu Ming, 24 years old, an engineering graduate from a top university in Shanghai. His parents spent all their savings on his education, tutoring, exam prep, tuition, because they believe that education is the key to a better life. Now he has been looking for a job for 8 months. He delivers food using an electric scooter just to pay the rent. He is staying in a small apartment with 3 other unemployed graduates. His parents' retirement fund has been depleted. Their dream was that their child would help them in their old age. They were disappointed. This was not what they expected. The old formula used to be simple. Study hard, get a degree, work in a corporate job, buy an apartment, get married, start a family, or retire comfortably. That was the path. That was the contract between parent and child. But now it seems like the ladder is gone. The steps have been broken. And millions of young people are starting to wonder, what's the point of sacrifice if there's nothing to fall back on? This is where what's called lying flat comes in. It's a movement that the Communist Party fears. Young people refusing to chase after careers that don't exist, refusing to buy houses they can't afford, refusing to have children they can't support, refusing to work overtime for a boss who could fire them at any time. They choose to do the minimum, just enough to get by, no more extra effort. Some even call it, let it rot. If the system is broken, why bother fixing it? The government doesn't like this kind of mindset. The propaganda about patriotism, hard work, and sacrifice for the country continues. The youth are being lectured about it. There are universities that require teaching love education to encourage marriage and childbirth. But a slogan isn't enough if reality is broken. You can't force optimism if there are no opportunities. And there are others who aren't just waiting, they're leaving. Inquiries about emigrating have reached record levels. Wealthy Chinese are moving their money to Singapore. They're buying property in Canada and Australia. They're sending their children abroad. They've been told not to come back. They call this the run philosophy. Leave while you still can. And it's not just the ultra-rich doing this. Even middle-class families are looking for any way out. Student visa, investment immigration, marrying a foreigner, any way possible before the door finally closes. Now the question is, what will happen if an entire generation loses trust in the system their parents built? When the future that was promised to them never arrives? For 40 years, there was a silent agreement between the Communist Party and the people. No voting, no protests, no opposition. In exchange, your life would get better every year. You would become wealthier. Your children would have a better future. That was the deal. Now it's being broken. When the property market crashed, it wasn't just money that was lost. Trust was lost too. When the government says everything is stable, but then it suddenly collapses, your safe investment disappears. When your child struggles more than you did, even though they worked harder, What's the point of the sacrifice for freedom? Now people are afraid to spend. They're saving up, preparing for something worse to come. The middle class that's expected to drive China's future, it shrank. For the first time since 1978, it's not expanding. It's contracting. There are fewer billionaires. Luxury spending is down. Even base money is weak. The government's answer is more control, more surveillance, more censorship, more nationalism. But you can't eat nationalism. You can't use it to pay rent. You can't save it for retirement. When the economy is strong, patriotism is just a bonus. When the economy is weak, it's just a distraction. And there are people who are no longer staying silent. In late 2022, people protested in Shanghai and Beijing against the COVID lockdowns. They were holding blank sheets of paper, a symbol of censorship. It was quickly silenced. But the party saw something. When enough people lose hope, something can happen. This is how a country falls. There isn't always a war or a revolution, but rather a slow loss of hope. A family that lost their savings, a graduate who gave up on their dreams, a couple who decided not to have children, an elderly parent with no one to support them. The property market won't recover if no one buys. No one will buy if there are no young people with money. There are no young people with money because the birth rate dropped a long time ago. And the birth rate won't rise if there are no stable jobs and a clear future. Each crisis makes the next one worse. In 40 years, China built its own NATO, a massive economic machine, modern cities, bullet trains, factories that supply the whole world. Its goal is to prove that an authoritarian system can surpass democracy. But there's a darker lesson. You can build a miracle using debt, cheap labor, and endless construction. But miracles don't last forever. The time to pay will come. The population will decline. The country will grow old before it truly becomes wealthy. Now, there aren't enough workers, not enough buyers, not enough believers. And when the second largest economy in the world falls, it won't just be China that gets affected. Supply chains will be disrupted, product prices will rise, the global economic order will change. Now, the question is there still a way to recover, or is the Chinese miracle really over? Tell me what you think, because this story isn't over yet.